What would you do if a little girl appeared on the sidewalk, barefoot and shivering, carrying two sick babies in her arms, and begged you not to call the police? Richard Caldwell was on his way to close a $50 million deal when he saw her. She was barely 11, but her eyes were older than his, haunted, determined, and desperately alone. That one glance shattered everything he thought he knew about control, success, and what truly mattered. He had no idea who she was or where she came from. All he knew was that her baby brother was burning with fever, and if he didn't act fast, the child might not make it through the night. He was a man who built his empire from nothing, a survivor of the foster system, a man who never looked back. But something about that girl, Lily, pulled him straight into a memory he'd buried long ago. What began as a moment of hesitation turned into a life-altering decision that would test the limits of love, responsibility, and the true meaning of family. Stay with us, because what happens next will touch your heart and just might change the way you see the world. The crying started at 5 a.m. Lily Bennett, only 11 years old, peeled herself off the cold concrete floor of the abandoned building she called home. Her back ached from the hard ground, and her fingers were stiff from the Portland morning chill. Lucas, one of her baby brothers, was burning with fever. His cries were weak, ragged, different from the usual fussiness of a hungry infant. She placed a trembling hand on his forehead. Too hot, much too hot. Beside her, Noah stirred in the thin blanket she'd salvaged from a dumpster weeks ago. He was still sleeping, or at least trying to, his tiny thumb in his mouth, oblivious to the fact that the world around them had no safety nets. Lily looked at the half-empty formula can. Maybe enough for 2 more bottles, 3 if she watered it down. Her stomach growled, but that wasn't important. She slipped on her oversized shoes, more like fabric than footwear at this point, and wrapped Lucas in the cleanest cloth she had left. Today she needed a miracle. Just a few miles away, in a sprawling mansion perched in Portland's West Hills, Richard Caldwell sipped imported espresso from bone china. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and success. His schedule was packed: a $50 million construction deal, a tense call with his investors in Brazil, and at least 3 back-to-back boardroom battles. As he adjusted his $3,000 tailored suit, Richard felt the weight of responsibility, not for people, but for profit margins. He was a man forged by survival, once a nameless child in a crowded orphanage, now a symbol of power and discipline. Few people knew the truth: he'd once been just like Lily. Years ago, at that very orphanage, Richard had been offered a lifeline. A wealthy couple looking to adopt had arrived, and the staff had chosen someone else to meet them: Matthew Blake, Richard's closest friend. But Matthew had shaken his head and said, "He needs it more than I do." That decision changed Richard's life forever. He never saw Matthew again. Back in the city, Lily walked quickly, avoiding eye contact. She passed men in suits, women in heels, all rushing to lives she could only imagine. She clutched Lucas closer as he whimpered, his breathing fast and shallow. Every step she took echoed desperation. Then she saw it: cars bigger than any she'd ever imagined, storefronts with clothes more expensive than her mother's entire life savings. This was the place. If help existed, it had to be here. Richard was reviewing permit issues from his back seat when he saw her, a tiny girl, carrying what looked like a bundle of rags. No shoes, dirty shirt, eyes far too old for her age. For a second he looked away. Then he looked again and froze. He knew that look, that bone-deep fear, that refusal to cry because crying was useless. It was like looking at a ghost from his own past. "Stop the car," Richard said sharply. "Sir," the driver replied, confused. "I said stop. Turn around." Seconds later, Richard stepped out of his luxury vehicle and walked toward Lily, who now sat curled up in the entryway of a closed bank, rocking Lucas as he cried in her arms. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Lily flinched, startled. Then she looked up. His suit, his watch, his perfect haircut. He looked like every other person who had ignored her that morning, but his eyes were different. "My brother," she whispered. "He's sick. He needs a doctor." Richard crouched down, saw the infant's flushed face, the rapid rise and fall of his chest. Even with no experience in children, he could tell this baby was in danger. "Where are your parents?" "I don't have any," Lily said simply. "Just them." And just like that, Richard's world shifted. He canceled his meetings, lifted Lily and the babies into his Mercedes, and gave the driver new orders. St. Mary's Children's Hospital. Fast. The girl didn't say much during the ride, but Richard watched her through the rearview mirror. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even panicked. She was just determined, hardened, much too young for that kind of resignation. At the hospital, things moved quickly. Lucas was taken into intensive care. Noah, mildly dehydrated, was checked in as well. A nurse turned to Richard. "Are you their father?" He didn't hesitate. Yes, he'd lied to seal deals before, but never like this. Within an hour, Jennifer Adams, a seasoned social worker, sat across from Richard in the waiting room, clipboard in hand. "There are inconsistencies in your story," she said coolly. "The girl says her mother died 3 months ago. You listed the mother as alive." Richard opened his mouth, then closed it again. Lily sat beside him, clutching a bottle of juice someone had given her. "No," he admitted. "I'm not their father. I found them this morning." Jennifer looked at him long and hard. "You realize this is a serious matter. These children are considered abandoned minors. They'll be placed in state care while we investigate." "What happens to them?" he asked. "They'll be separated. The babies will go to an infant care home. The girl will go to a different facility." Richard looked at Lily. Her body tensed. She didn't cry, but her grip on the juice bottle tightened so hard it began to bend. "Is there another option?" he asked quietly. "You could request to be a temporary guardian. 6 months while the case is reviewed." "I don't know anything about children." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "You brought them here. You're paying the bills. That's more than most." Richard felt like the floor was shifting beneath him. His mansion, his empire, his life of control and predictability, all threatened by 3 strangers, with his last name scribbled on hospital forms. But then Lily looked up and asked one small question that broke him completely. "What's going to happen to us now?" And Richard Caldwell, man of steel empire builder, survivor of orphanage silence, didn't have an answer. I'm truly sorry to pause the story here, but some moments deserve to breathe. What would you have done in Richard's place? Do you believe family is made by blood or by choice? Tell me below, what country are you watching this from? And if this story touched you even a little, don't forget to like and tap that heart. It means the world to us. Richard Caldwell hadn't slept in 24 hours. Not because of a board meeting or a financial crisis or one of the countless million-dollar problems that used to keep him awake. No, tonight it was a baby. Lucas had been admitted to the pediatric wing with a severe respiratory infection. Every hour counted. Every minute without treatment might have meant the difference between life and death. Noah thankfully was stable, but Lily hadn't left her brother's side for more than 5 seconds. And Richard, he couldn't walk away. He sat on the stiff vinyl chair outside the ICU. His Italian suit wrinkled, his mind buzzing. What was he doing? Why had he lied? Why was he still here? A nurse approached him with a clipboard. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, soft but firm. "We need signatures for treatment authorization, and the social worker wants a word." Jennifer Adams was waiting in a glass-walled office nearby. She didn't bother to smile this time. "I understand you've agreed to be temporary guardian," she said, tapping her pen. "I need you to sign as legal caretaker for now. It's only 6 months. After that, the court will decide." 6 months, he echoed. "Yes. Or they go to the state. Separate facilities." Richard's eyes drifted to Lily, asleep on a hospital bench, with Noah curled in her arms. Her shoes were still damp from walking through the city, and her face twitched occasionally, like even her dreams weren't safe. He signed the papers. The ink hadn't dried when Lily woke up with a start. "Where's Lucas?" she asked, panicked. "He's okay," Richard said, crouching down beside her. "The doctors are helping him. I signed the papers. You're all coming home with me." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She just nodded slowly and looked down at Noah, now sleeping peacefully in her lap. Richard's mansion in West Hills had never seen chaos like this. Within hours, Grace, the housekeeper, was organizing everything. Cribs, formula, diapers, fever meds, thermometers. Lily didn't ask for anything for herself. She only asked, "Do you have a humidifier?" Lucas breathes better with one. That night, the guest room was transformed into a nursery. Noah cried when Richard tried to hold him the wrong way. Lily taught him to support the baby's neck. When Richard struggled with a diaper, she showed him how to fasten it properly. She even scolded him politely when he forgot to warm the bottle. "You're going to scare his stomach," she said quietly, handing him the warmed milk. Richard blinked. "Do you always take care of them like this?" She nodded. "Since they were born." "Mom worked double shifts. I did nights. You're 11. "I know." Later that night, Lucas called out in his sleep, barely audible through the baby monitor. Lily was up in seconds, but so was Richard. They met in the hallway, both instinctively rushing to the same crib. Lily got there first. "He's fine," she whispered. "Just dreaming." Richard stood back, watching her gently stroke her brother's hair. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She just cared. More deeply than most adults he knew. The next morning, Jennifer called. "We'll be doing an in-home evaluation next week. We'll need to inspect the living conditions, interview Lily, and check for safety." Richard looked around. A mansion, yes. A pristine lawn, 5 bedrooms, marble floors. But safe for children. By noon, a new routine had already formed. Noah needed medicine every 4 hours. Lucas had to be fed in smaller, slower amounts. Lily insisted on helping with everything. Richard offered her a break, a nap, a warm bath. She refused it all. "Don't you want to rest? I don't know how," she said simply. That answer stayed with him. 2 days passed, then 3. Richard canceled meetings. His business partners were livid. His phone rang nonstop. At one point, his assistant called 15 times in 2 hours. He didn't answer once. And then in the quiet of the 4th night, everything changed. Noah, usually the calm one, began screaming. Richard ran in confused. Lily was already holding the baby, but Noah's face was red, his fists clenched. He was burning up. "He has a fever," Lily gasped. "What if it's like Lucas?" Richard didn't wait. He grabbed the car keys, wrapped Noah in a blanket, and raced to the hospital. Lily sat in the back seat, cradling her brother, whispering to calm him. At St. Mary's, they were met by the same nurse from earlier. "This one now?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Richard said. "He's burning up." The nurse scanned Noah. "Low-grade fever. Nothing critical. You did the right thing bringing him in, but he can be treated at home." She handed Richard a list of instructions and prescriptions. When they got home, it was nearly 3 a.m. Richard held the small fever medicine bottle in his hands, reading the label like it was a foreign language. "How do I give this to him?" he asked Lily. She took it from him calmly. "Like this," she said, using the dropper gently. "Just watch his face." Richard sat in stunned silence. She was 11, and yet somehow she'd become his teacher. That night after Noah fell asleep, Richard stepped into the hallway. Lily was standing by the nursery door, arms crossed, watching her brothers through the crack. She didn't hear him approach. "You're doing more than any kid should ever have to do," he said softly. She turned, unsure of how to respond. "You shouldn't have to be their mother, but someone has to." Richard knelt beside her. "You're not alone anymore." She hesitated, then asked the question that would haunt him all night. "For how long?" "I'm truly sorry to stop the story here, but some choices need time to settle in the heart. If you were Richard, would you have signed those guardianship papers? Do you think love can grow faster when it's born out of necessity? Let us know where you're watching from, and if this story moved you, please tap that heart and give this video a like. It means the world to us. 3 months later, Richard Caldwell stood in front of a courtroom he never imagined he'd set foot in, not as a businessman, but as a father. The room was quiet, almost reverent. Behind him sat Lily, dressed in a soft blue dress they'd picked out together, her hair brushed back neatly, though a small cowlick refused to stay down. On either side of her were Noah and Lucas, now brighter, chubbier, and full of laughter. The boys didn't understand what today meant, but Lily did. Her hands trembled in her lap. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the papers in front of her. "Mr. Caldwell," she began. "3 months ago, you had no connection to these children. Today, you're requesting permanent adoption. Please tell the court why." Richard cleared his throat. This wasn't a boardroom pitch. This was something deeper. "Your Honor, I didn't plan any of this," he began honestly. "I met Lily and her brothers by accident, but the moment I saw them, especially her, I recognized something I hadn't seen in years. I saw myself." He paused, searching for the right words. "Years ago, I was an orphan, hungry, scared, angry at the world. A family took me in, changed my life. I built an empire out of that chance. But until Lily and her brothers came into my life, I didn't realize I was still missing something. I had money but not meaning, comfort but no connection. He looked back at Lily. She met his gaze. Her eyes filled with tears but steady. These children, they didn't just need me. I needed them too. I didn't expect to become a father. But now, I can't imagine being anything else. The judge sat quietly for a moment. Then she turned to Lily. Lily, sweetheart, would you like to say something? Lily stood up slowly, walked to the front, and stood on her tiptoes to reach the microphone. I didn't trust grown-ups before, she said plainly. They always left. My mom, she tried, but she got sick. And after she died, I thought it was just me and my brothers against the world. She looked back at Richard. But then he showed up, and he didn't leave. Her voice wavered, but she kept going. He stayed when Lucas got sick. He stayed when Noah cried all night. He stayed when I had bad dreams and couldn't sleep. He doesn't yell. He learns. He tries. He reads us stories even when he's tired. She took a breath. He let me be a kid again. The room was silent. Even the judge looked moved. After a brief recess, the judge returned, her voice gentler this time. In all my years, I've seen many adoption cases, some with hesitation, some with heartbreak. But this is something rare. Not only have these children found a home, they've found a family. She struck the gavel. Effective immediately, Lily Noah and Lucas Bennett are legally the children of Mr. Richard Caldwell. Gasps, then clapping. Lily ran to Richard and wrapped her arms around him. The boys followed, babbling, unaware of the gravity of what had just happened. That night, the Caldwell home didn't feel like a mansion. It felt like something better. Noah knocked over a bowl of cereal. Lucas chewed on a book. Lily helped Grace make cookies in the kitchen floor, dusting her cheeks. And Richard sat in the living room, a crayon drawing in his lap. Lily had made it weeks ago. 4 figures holding hands under a big sun. Above it, in bright, uneven letters, my family. He remembered all the nights he'd stayed awake wondering if he was enough, if this was right, if he was capable of being what they needed. Now he no longer questioned it. Later that evening, Lily came out to the patio where Richard was watching the stars. Do you think Mom would be proud of me? She asked quietly. Richard looked at her, this girl who had carried more weight than most adults ever would. I think she'd be proud of who you are and of the life you helped build for your brothers. And I think she'd thank you for saving me too. Lily leaned against his arm, quiet for a while. I'm not scared anymore, she whispered. Neither was he. And in that moment, under the vast Oregon sky, Richard Caldwell realized wealth had once built his empire, but love had built his legacy. What moment in this story touched your heart the most? Do you believe that some families are born and others are built? How do you feel about this story? Type number 3 in the comments if you loved it. Number 2 if it felt okay, or number 1 if it didn't fully hit the mark for you. Tell us what country you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if this story warmed your heart, please hit like, tap the heart, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances.